I've got a secret ingredient that I love to add to my watercolor paintings, and in this video, I'm sharing all the details with you. We're going to paint some peonies together today, and I'm going to tell you all about my super special watercolor thing in a second, but I'll give you the supply rundown. I'm working on hot pressed paper today. I've blocked out a nice square here. I like to just get a big piece of paper and then I can make my paintings any size. You can use washi tape to block out an area on a page, and this is what the paper looks like. It's hot pressed, as I said, so nice smooth texture. Hot pressed is my favorite paper, but you can also use cold pressed. It will work just as well. It has a little more tooth and texture, and some people like that. And then you'll want watercolor paints. I'm using my Munoz set. I have some colors already mixed up there, although we'll talk about what colors I'm using. You're going to want some clean water, a couple glasses of clean water, paper towel for blotting your brush, and then of course you'll want some watercolor paint brushes, and I have a couple here. I'm using a number 8 round brush as well as a number 4 and a number 2. I've got a couple number 4 brushes there. For this project, you basically want a smaller and a larger round paintbrush. That's it. And then here's my secret ingredient, and it is gouache. If you've been watching a lot of my videos this year, you might have guessed that this is what this video was going to be about. Gouache is a highly opaque water-based medium that is so similar to watercolor paint. It basically just doesn't get as transparent when you add water. You need to add water to it, just like watercolors, but it stays very opaque, and you can water it down, and it's totally fine to water it down, but you can also get a wonderful opacity and use it in combination with your watercolors to layer and add light on top of dark, which we know with watercolor is kind of impossible. So, with that said, we'll talk more about gouache later. I'm using a bit of pink paint here, and we are going to paint some peonies together. Now, I'm going to run through how I paint them. This is not a peony painting tutorial by any means, but we're going to talk it through. Mix up a nice light pink with a bit of darker paint on the palette as well, so you can grab from different areas. And then this is how you paint the peony. Start with the petal right in the center, a nice round petal. Then we're going to place one petal on the right and another to the left, kind of curving big fluffy petals. Then you're going to place the kind of little hints of petals up above those first 3, just peeking out. After that, we put 2 more on the bottom, 1 and 2. They can be sort of any loose shape, just a nice tug of the brush. And then you might add a few more thin brush strokes hinting at outer petals, and that gives us the look of our big fluffy peony flower. Let's paint one more together. This time I've got a very, very light pink on my brush, and I'm going to start with the bottom petal, a very shallow petal, so 1 horizontal brush stroke. Actually, I did a couple of petals across the bottom there. Then I did those 3 large petals across the top of the flower, a couple thin curving brush strokes to hint at layers and layers of petals around the outside, around the perimeter. And then I think I'll just take a little bit of a peachy color and I'll put like a 1 bud over here. So just basically a circle. You can muss that up a little bit and then just leave it alone. Let's rinse our brush and pick up some green. For green, I'm using olive brown. That's the color. If you don't have a nice earthy green like olive brown, try mixing red or brown into the green that you do have to give you that nice natural warm earthy green. And then I want to frame these 3 large flowers with lots and lots of large leaves. So all around the flowers we want leaves. And all I do to paint them is I take the large belly of my round brush and I just run it across the paper. I add a little pressure and 1 or 2 brush strokes gives me a nice leaf shape. And I use the tip, the delicate pointed tip of that round brush to paint all the stems and branches connecting those leaves and connecting the flowers. And as I said, we're going to frame our peonies entirely with lots and lots of leaves. So just add as many as you like. Think about making them different sizes and slightly different shapes, and it's going to look really organic, and it's going to make those flowers pop. Okay, once that's done, your peonies are probably dry, so you can grab a nice orangey color. This is a mix of orange and raw sienna, and we're going to paint the stamens. So just put putting some little dots and lines and messy bits at the center of the flowers. And I think that's when they really start to look like peonies. If the flowers are on more of an angle, you can just kind of do a line of little lines and dots. If you've got a big open flower like the one at the top, you can make more of a circle or oval shaped peony. I'm also going to take a darker green and just add a little bit of shading to my leaves here. I kind of just put like a big splotch of dark green on some of them, and it really looks nice. You don't have to overthink that part. And then the same thing with the flowers. We want to take a darker pink or a darker peach and just add a little bit of shading, add some low light. So towards the bottom of the petals and towards the center of the flower. That's where the light wouldn't hit as easily. Okay, at this point I've got like what is basically a finished watercolor painting, but I want to add some gouache to it. I've just been using gouache a lot lately and I'm loving it. So I have indigo here, a nice dark blue. I'm going to add that to my palette, and I'm also adding white. And gouache, like a watercolor paint, is like a paste. It's like the consistency of toothpaste. You need to add lots and lots of water. You want it to be watery, soupy when it goes on the page. Do not use it right out of the tube. I mean, you can, but in general, do not. And it can be mixed very beautifully with watercolor paint. So I have a nice Payne's gray here with in watercolor, and I'm going to mix that in because I don't have a gray gouache. So it just shows how beautifully they mix. And now I've mixed up this dark blue gray, and you can see, even though it is the consistency of like a watery soup right now, I am putting it on the page and it's totally opaque, and you just want to go over the tape so that you get a nice clean border. And I'm going to go all around here and give my watercolor painting this beautiful background. You could do this with watercolor, of course, but as you know, when watercolor dries, you can get really harsh edges and it can be hard to make a lot of one color and one transparency. So gouache is a great way to add a background to your watercolors. And we're also going to use gouache to create some beautiful highlights on this painting. First though, let me finish up my background. I'm going to flip the painting upside down when I need to. You just want to be comfortable with the brush, and sometimes I'm more comfortable pulling it towards my body, especially in these tight little nooks and crannies. So just do whatever you need to do to be super comfortable when you're painting really close to those florals. Once the background is complete, we're going to add those highlights with gouache. So I'm using a little pale pink. I've got a magenta, white. I'm also going to add some details to the leaves. So I have a little bit of green and brown there. As I said, consistency of toothpaste. You need to add lots and lots of water. It should be the consistency of water. I had some of you commenting that your gouache dried and you couldn't use it. When you mix in tons of water, you should always be able to pick it up off the palette by simply wetting it. So don't try to use it as it is out of the pan or out of the tube. I know that can be tempting when you've come in from acrylics or something. So then what we can do is just add some little highlights to these flowers. We don't have to worry if a part was looking really dark. You can go in with just a hint of pale pink and lighten it up, and that's what's so great. And it doesn't really change the look of the watercolor painting. I think I'm going to get questions like, can I do this with acrylics? Like, you can, but acrylics, they just don't work as beautifully with watercolor. But I'm all about breaking the rules. So if you've got acrylics, try it out. Why not? This is all just for fun, right? We're just trying things and playing and having some creative me time. The gouache is so opaque that you can actually put pale pink flowers right on top of the dark blue background. So that's pretty cool. So we can add some fun little floral sprigs or something there if we want to. And then I am not going to stop at adding just highlights. I'm also going to add some lowlights and some dark details with my green and brown mix here. This is gouache, and I am just putting some lowlights on some of the stems and the leaves. This is definitely going to add a quality to this painting that might not look as much like watercolor, especially when I'm adding like all this extra detail on top of the blue background, but I kind of like that. It's just something different and fun, and I'm adding these tiny leaves. It gives a nice detail to the entire piece, something smaller, and yeah, that's about it. You can always pick up some watercolor as well and mix watercolors with the gouache and add extra water to the gouache for a watercolory look. If you feel like you did something on the leaf that was a little too stiff, add some water, take a damp brush and just blend and bleed it out like you would with watercolor. The final step here is just simply to add, I just wanted to add a little bit of darker watercolor to the stamens. They just looked like they needed a little bit of darkening, and then that's it. I'm all done. This was a really fun painting to complete, especially since gouache is sort of new to me. I've just been experimenting with it over the past couple months, and I'm having a lot of fun. My favorite step in this process is removing the washi tape. Of course, this is such a good payoff, that clean white border, and it looks all the more dramatic because we use that opaque gouache. So I hope you'll give this medium a try. If you love watercolors, pick up just a couple tubes of gouache. You don't need a whole set, and try it out. Maybe just grab a gray or white to use for backgrounds or highlights or whatever. Anyway, that's mine all done. I'm gonna put my signature on here, just because it looks so finished with that border, I think. Thanks for following along. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, please. It keeps these videos coming, and I'll see you soon with a new tutorial.